Welcome to Take Me With You, Episode 3. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Cheryl. We are two well-traveled people who want to go everywhere.
But that's not going to happen. Instead, we'll travel vicariously by inviting a guest to share their unique travel stories with us.
Today, we are talking to Mikaela. Welcome, Mikaela.
Welcome.
Hi. So, Mikaela currently lives in Boston with her husband and fur baby. Griffey is his name, Griffey, right?
Yes.
Because you're a Mariners fan.
And I'm a fan of Kim Griffey,
Yeah.
as you can be, and should be.
And, Mikaela's been a traveler for a lot of her life and has lived abroad at points and lived in 6 countries and 5 states and, has had the travel bug forever. So we're so excited to have you on our show.
Thank you. It's
Yay.
fun to be here.
You were excited about this podcast from like the moment that it was an idea.
I would absolutely say that that's true. Actually, Ryan and I were just talking about that. I was minorly jealous that Ryan got to be your co-host instead of me.
Just minorly jealous? I feel like it's more than just minorly jealous.
Jealousy there. But this is something that I'm certainly passionate about and have loved for as long as I could possibly remember. And I definitely think about when I heard Cheryl's podcast, you being a guest on Wedding Confessionals, and wish that I could have been the one to step in as your nitress in shining armor. To be the one to share this podcast with you, because this is something that I love so much. So I'm really, really glad that I actually get to be the guest on this podcast.
Oh, yay.
Well, we're really glad to have you. So let's just start, find out a little bit more about you and travel. So my first question for you is, okay, you love travel so much. Why? What do you love about it?
Oh my gosh. There's so many layers to that. Honestly, I feel like a lot of it comes from my mom raising me. She had traveled a lot when she was in college and beyond. And so when she was raising us, it just was kind of an expected thing that we would travel and that we would experience other cultures. And so she tried to expose that to us as much as she possibly could. And then my sister and I were actually raised in Spanish immersion. So our teachers were from other countries. And then in middle school, or high school, I don't know. You guys probably know better than I do. I don't totally remember when we were actually allowed to go to Mexico. High school?
That would have been high school, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, first mission trip down to Mexico, and I don't know, there was just something about, I knew that I knew the language, but there was something about being in that country and being exposed to that culture that was brand new and that was so exciting to me. That was something that honestly stuck with me forever. That I knew that my heart cared for these people so deeply, and yet who I was and the culture that I had at home was so drastically different. And so I tried to understand that, and I mean, it was very difficult as a 13-year-old. I don't even know how old I was.
Probably
very
at least
young
14.
person at that point, to try and distinguish what is right and wrong, and what is good and bad, and what is, normal and not normal and everything. And I think the exposure to everything was kind of confusing to me at that point, but I loved it and was confused by it all at the same time. And I feel like that forever impacted me moving forward in being able to understand, and even just choosing to select opportunities to go abroad and to seek out people that I know that are from different countries. And I don't know. Yeah. So I think the desire to go abroad has been stimulated by all of those things of my mom and growing up in the different contexts that I have. So, yeah. Hope that answered the question.
That's a great answer.
In the short, long way.
Yeah, no, that was great. So what type of traveler are you? And that's intentionally vague. So you can kind of define that how you feel would be most appropriate.
Oh my gosh. That's a very good question, and one that I've asked myself, I don't know, thousands of times, honestly. What type of traveler am I? Beyond the word intentional, I would say that I seek to be a local traveler. One that does intentionally seek out locals. So I try to stay at Airbnbs if possible or with friends when I go to new places so that I can learn from their perspective what the culture is like in the city that they live in, even what the food is like, what the people are like, and all the different things that you just can't find out if you're simply a tourist. So
I was just wondering, so with the Airbnbs, do you prefer to rent a room then in like a family's house so that you get to meet whoever, like the people that own that? Or do you just see them like when you're like checking in and those sorts of things? Or how do you see that connected to really getting to be like a local?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think I would honestly rather rent a room than anything. I mean, obviously it depends on the kind of trip that I'm going on, but I would say 9 times out of 10, I'm looking to rent a room so that I can actually meet the people that I'm staying with and get to know the local culture of the city that I'm in, the town, whatever it is. And I feel like you really can't get that if you're not willing to meet the people that you're staying with,
Nice. That's awesome. And I'm just curious. So you did Spanish immersion. So would you define yourself as fluent? You also lived in Spain, so there's that.
Yeah. So as of 10 years old, technically I've been fluent since 10, and it's been a maintenance thing since then. So I'm definitely grateful that I was able to live in Spain, because that certainly helped maintain it more than I ever possibly could. There's a lot that I've greatly benefited from by being in Spanish immersion, and I feel like forcing myself to maintain that over the years and then go to Spanish-speaking countries in my adult years has been the, capstone, essentially, of Spanish immersion growing up.
So do you continue to practice Spanish? Because you're in, what did you say, Boston now?
Yeah.
I
am
don't know
in
how much
Boston.
Spanish is spoken in Boston. I've never been there.
True. They tend to speak English in Boston, unfortunately. So,
I guess I can see that.
Weirdly, there's not a ton of Spanish here. I do seek it out as much as I possibly can, but I honestly do not get to speak it as much as I wish that I did. Although when I was in Spain, it was nearly constant for the 3.5 years that I was there. So it's been a matter of me seeking out opportunities and then placing myself in situations where I know that I would be able to practice it. So it's not an everyday thing, but I wish that it were.
Okay, I have a question then. Did you get to the point where you were thinking in Spanish?
Yeah, yes. But that also came in elementary school.
Okay.
Again,
wow. So how about like now? Like, do you think in both languages, or how does that work?
I do. So weirdly, I think in French, Spanish, and Portuguese and English on a regular
basis. You speak
basis.
all of those languages?
Like you do. Well, sure. I mean, who doesn't?
Well,
really?
sure, of course. Everybody speaks 4 or 5 languages.
Thank you.
Wow.
These are normal things, right?
We are inadequate.
Cheryl, I think we found our new travel buddy. She can translate for us.
No. See, this is the weird thing. My mom speaks French, and she spoke to us in French when we were kids, babies. So I grew up hearing French all the time, and then it was Spanish immersion. And then when I was in grad school, I sought out a Brazilian Portuguese program there. So I've had many opportunities to learn all these different languages. But because of this, and honestly because of my own upbringing, I've had plenty of opportunity to learn these languages to the point where I feel comfortable speaking and thinking in these languages.
Wow.
So it's not weird for me. Like when you ask that question, I mean, weirdly, of course I've thought in these languages. And yet, then I step back and I'm like, well, maybe that's not weird. Or maybe that's not normal. I don't really know. But I certainly have, and I am very grateful for the linguistic ability to be able to think in these other languages. But then there's the other obvious obstacle of being able to communicate with friends or with newcomers in these other languages, you know, along the way.
That's so cool. Wow.
One day at a time.
I'm very, very jealous. Yep, definitely jealous. So we've kind of been. You've referenced it several times. I think we should probably kind of dive in to, I think, what you're going to kind of focus on telling us about during this episode, which is the time that you lived in Spain. You said that was for 3 years?
3.5 years, yeah.
3.5.
In Spain.
And that was not part of like a study abroad program. That was as you had graduated from college. You were a full-fledged adult living in Spain.
True, yes. I had just graduated from grad school and at the time was trying to figure out what, you know, my life path was and everything. And I knew this is a totally separate conversation, of course, but I knew that I was supposed to go to Spain. It was just a matter of when and how. And there were so many circumstances that perfectly lined up that could not have been more perfectly arranged. And one way or another, I ended up in Spain in a situation that was the job that I had most desperately wanted in community development, working in a country where I spoke the language and had no fear of trying to translate anything or, you know, whatever sort of confusion there could have possibly been between Spanish and English or Portuguese and English or something that was like, I maybe don't know, but I mean, I had basically grown up with this language. And to be able to step into a job that I was so comfortable in and a language that I was comfortable in was the most incredible thing there.
That's so cool.
That's really cool.
So tell us about the area of Spain that you lived in.
So I was in the southern coast of Spain. It was Malaga. It was the Andalusia region of Spain, which, if I'm going to be biased, which I probably should, because I'm on this show, everybody should go to Andalusia because it is incredible. It has not only Malaga, but it's got Granada, Sevilla, Toledo, like all of these amazing, beautiful regions of Spain that are culturally amazing, obviously, but then historic and just sometimes not totally recognized for their full beauty and maybe not even given the full quality of what they are individually. That I feel sometimes the fact that I was there in just one tiny city of that entire region, I feel like I sometimes need to advocate for who they are But it just is, it's a really bountiful region of Spain. It's got the entire mix of the Moorish people, of all of, northern Africa, and all of those people coming in and taking over Spain as the Catholics were also coming down to southern Spain. And so it was this beautiful mix of the two cultures coming together, and seeing the outcome of it is what you actually see in those cities in that region. It's
Wow.
amazing. And
That's so
something
cool.
that you honestly cannot find in many other countries, because the Islamic and Catholic cultures don't blend in a lot of places. But there you find such a beautiful blend, and I honestly cannot find any other word other than beautiful, because if you go to these architectural places and you stand before them, you look at them and you say, clearly they're beautiful. There's nothing else beyond that.
So is that something that is just reflected in the history and in the architecture, or did you see that play out while you lived there as well? That these different kind of cultures, kind of that come out of religion, coexist in that region?
That's a very good question. I would not say that the contemporary people of this day are open to religion, only because they appear to be very new agey and are not exactly open even to Catholicism, much less, Islam or Judaism or anything else that might come their way based on their own history. But they know what their history is, and they know the words of it and the stories of it, and so they know that they are nominally Catholic, but the way that they operate in their daily lives appears to be fairly magical or new age or anything other than the typical Catholic or Judaistic religious ways. And so it was very interesting to me, because I was so not expecting that, given who the people group are and the things that they tend to value as a group. The people individually that I got to know were so not that way at all. And the stories that they shared were not at all Catholics or
Interesting.
Christians or Jewish or even Islams, that might share some root stories. It was fascinating.
Wow. So I have another question about the people there. How would you describe the way they live their lives? What does a day-to-day look like? How do they interact with each other? Kind of what is that piece of the culture in Andalusia?
Oh man, I would say that for the most part, these people are very warm and friendly. They tend to be open to the idea of meeting up for coffee or tea or churros or something delicious in the morning. And then from there, they go about their day, but they're not going to stop their day. If you want to have a longer conversation with them, or if you happen upon them in the middle of the day, they seem to be fairly slow going, with no real priority, honestly, about, getting through their day or any sort of checklist that they have to accomplish for their day. But it's just, this is what they do, and this is a cyclical rhythm, if if you can even put it in terms of a cycle or circle or something, just about what they do. And then even beyond that, it kind of seems like if they were to go beyond their normal cyclical rhythms, then it was only into family circumstances. And they're not going to branch off into anything new or anything that they don't really know or that it seems kind of foreign to them, but they're just going to maybe delve deeper into something that they're already present in, which, of course, for me as a foreigner was mildly difficult, but did help me realize how much they truly value family there and value deep relationship and meaningful relationships, and not necessarily somebody like me that is just moving in and is willing to be friends with anybody, and recognizing that, you know, it might take a year or two to delve into true, deep relationship with any of these people that I'm neighbors with.
So what did that process look like to get connected in this culture then?
So I had the advantage of being a white person who speaks English and was able to offer my abilities to speak English and Spanish with them and practice both languages. So I actually was able to build a lot of relationships with people just by having coffee with them or meeting with them for a glass of wine in the evening to practice language over, you know, for like an hour, hour and a half or something over the course of an evening or morning, and just know that whatever conversation we had might be somewhat meaningless, but for me, I knew that I was spending time with these people, and I knew also in return they were spending time with me. And that is what it takes to actually build relationship in this culture and context. And I was very grateful that, honestly, that's all that it took in that setting, because I think if I had not had the ability to speak both languages, it may have taken me years to get to that point of reaching some sort of trust and understanding of being able to be friends with my own neighbors who I was sharing life with and going to the same grocery store as, and the same whatever, like video store, whatever it might have been in the neighborhood. If we didn't have some shared conversation, it was as if I did not exist to them.
So, kind of building off of this, so often when you spend an extended amount of time in another country, they talk about culture shock. And I think, from my understanding, usually really tends to hit like 6 to 9 months after you've moved to another culture, which is usually another country also. It sounds like you kind of already had an in with being able to speak the language. Would you say that you experienced culture shock? And if so, what was that experience for you?
I would say that I absolutely experienced it. So my previous experiences in Europe had been primarily in Northern Europe, in France, England, and Sweden. And so moving to Spain was moderately confusing because I was expecting the culture to be fairly similar and to be, you know, a little bit progressive and much more Western, much more like the culture that we experience in the U.S., although clearly European. And weirdly, when I moved to Spain, it felt like I was in Africa. And I had just experienced, like a year and a half prior, I had gone to Uganda for the summer and experienced what African life is like. And I understand that that is also completely different. But when I moved to Spain, it felt much more similar to Africa than it did to any European culture that I had experienced, which to me was a shock. It was something that I had not at all expected, even though I had been exposed to both African and European cultures. It was not what I was looking for. So it was new.
Wow.
Do you think that was true? I'm assuming that you traveled in other parts of Spain while you were there. I guess I should ask that first. Do you think that culture that you said was much more similar to African culture that you experienced is indicative of Spanish culture overall? Or since Malaga is just across the water from Africa, that it was the kind of the culture had bled across in that way, or maybe some other reason that I didn't come up with?
No, actually, you're totally right. It's very much that Malaga is heavily steeped in African culture because it is so close to Africa. I spent time in Madrid, Barcelona, and even northern Spain, and none of those places seem to be quite as African culturally feeling as Malaga did. And I think a lot of that does come from its proximity to Africa. And then also the fact that most of its immigrants, like a lot of Malaga's population comes from the immigrants that come through, which are clearly from Africa. So there's a lot of that. And then there's also the historical part of Malaga that is very, very, very Moorish, which is, Africans coming from northern Africa and leaving their very majestic territories, which were beautiful at the time, and they were, very powerful in that era. But if they leave that behind, then that's what the local people understand. And it's very different from our Western understanding. No matter how modern Malaga tries to be, they can't be, because that's not what they know.
Sure. That slow pace and that long intentional amount of time to build relationships that you were describing, is that some of what you're saying is more of that African feel, or is that something that is more indicative of the Spanish side, do you think?
Oh, man. Wow.
Or maybe a blending of the two. I don't know.
No, good questions. I don't know. I mean, in some ways, I would say that's 100% African, but at the same time, I don't know. Like, that feels very Spanish to me, to do that. No matter what part of Spain I've been to, they've been very, very intentional about the friendships that they build and the people that they get to know. And so it's not necessarily that I'm in southern Spain and, they've always been this way because they've been this way for centuries, but it's also just, it's in their blood. I think a lot of Spaniards will take the time to get to know people because they care to get to know them, and some of them get to know them or take the time to get to know them because they don't necessarily trust the other person, whereas other people take the time to get to know them because they desperately care to know their past and who they are, and all of this that is like a huge part of people's identity, and it seems to depend on the part of Spain that you're from. And I don't know that I would necessarily be able to say that all Spaniards are that way because of their past, although I would certainly say that a lot of southern Spaniards are that way.
That's really interesting. So something else I'd love to hear about Malaga and just about Andalusia is, what does it look like there? I've been there, but can you describe?
I have not.
For our listeners.
So
describe for Ryan.
Cheryl.
Describe for Ryan, because he doesn't know.
I've never been to Spain at all, so yeah.
Oh man. Well, in Malaga, you're on the beach, so it's brutal. Let me just tell you, it's rough.
Yeah,
it's real
Cheryl
awful.
especially would not enjoy that.
Oh, I hated it so much. She made me go in the Mediterranean. It was just the worst.
I know,
So,
right?
yeah.
It was the worst. I made her go to the beach.
Oh, wait, you visited Mikaela while she was in Malaga?
I did.
Yeah.
I got
Oh,
to
That
stay
was
I
with
her
her.
missed
second
that
visit
piece.
there.
I feel like
Yeah.
that's kind of an important thing that we should probably talk
Yeah,
about
I
too.
got
in
to
a
Don't
stay
few
tell
with
the
her.
minutes.
listeners. They don't need to know.
Anyway,
Come
sorry to
on.
interrupt. Continue your description, and then we'll come back to
Thank
this whole Malaga visit.
you. So I would say, for the most part, the beach is pretty gorgeous. And then the rest of Andalusia is either mountainous and beautiful if you're in the mountains, or deserty. And there's like some extremes. I mean, in some ways, it kind of seems like Southern California from the little bit that I got to know about it. And I don't even know if that means anything to you or the listeners. But it was fine. It was really, honestly, very nice having the mountains be as close as they were to us, but then also having the beach right there and being able to go to the water as quickly as we wanted to, and being able to see the mountains if we wanted to, and know that if we really desperately needed some sort of altitude or whatever weirdness, then we could just drive 2 hours, and we would be fine. But I would say, for the most part, Andalusia is like a fairly dry area, and not like the land of the plenty or the land of the milk and honey or anything. There's some crops that grow there here and there, but for the most part, you're either in beach or high desert / mountain land.
And there's the Sierra Nevadas, right?
Yes, exactly. Those are the mountains there that are pretty epic.
Wait, are they actually called the Sierra Nevadas?
Yes, they are.
Oh, okay. So yes, like Southern California. All right then.
Exactly.
That's really funny. And then the climate, is it pretty warm?
Yes, big time. In where we were, I think like maybe the cool temperatures got to like the low 40s, maybe at night in the winter months, but that was like November to February or something. Okay. And then for the most part after that, it was like hot, and humid. So I don't know, like June to through October, probably high 90s and super humid.
Okay.
Just right on the water there.
Brace yourself. Should you ever want to go to Malaga or
so basically, I should go in the
there.
winter. Okay.
Basically, yes. Or just bring your bathing suit and you'll be fine.
Yeah, I visited you in May.
Yeah. Yes, was it May?
Yeah, it was May a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And it was not an unbearable temperature. It was a really nice temperature that time of year. It was
so
just lovely.
Nice.
It was probably like 70s or like maybe 80s, but probably more like 70s.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I feel like it was
really
relatively
nice.
cool.
Yeah.
I remember going to the beach and feeling like maybe I should have brought a sweater or a towel or something.
Yeah, like I dipped my
It was
toe in the
very
water
nice.
because I was like, I need to say that I've been in the Mediterranean. But like it was a quick little dip. We'll post that pic on our Instagram though, so you know.
So it was real. It definitely happened. Totally.
Yes.
So what else did you guys do when you visited, Cheryl?
Mikaela was a wonderful host, so she made sure I got my coffee in the morning at one of the little cafes. What do you call them? Like the little restaurants where you just go get the cafe, yeah. And so we got your like little tiny coffee in the morning, and that was very fun. We went to the beach. We went out to eat. We went to
Granada.
Yeah, we went to Granada for a day
And where
with
is
some
that?
of her friends. That's further north and east.
Yeah. Ish.
And
yeah,
Granada's
just found it on the map.
larger. It's larger than Malaga, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
And it's famous
yeah.
for a castle. Is it a castle or a fortress or what is it exactly? The Alhambra?
Fortress. Yeah, a fortress.
A fortress, yeah. And that was really fun as well. And then what else did we do there? Yeah, we did a lot of visiting the little like areas. We went to a market and that was really fun. And yeah, it was a wonderful time. We got some fresh squeezed orange juice, and it was really funny because we went to this restaurant, and Mikaela was like raving about the orange juice, and then we order some, and they bring out like a can of orange juice, and she was like, "No, we're leaving," and so we like just left. Because she was like, "This is not the orange." Well, we like talked to them first. We were like, "This is not."
No, but I had told her like they only ever squeeze fresh orange juice here. Nobody ever serves it out of a bottle. Like this is ridiculous. And then as soon as he brought out like the Tropicana or whatever it was, I was like, no. We can't have this. It was ridiculous.
Oh my goodness, that was really funny. And then, I mean, probably the most important thing is that we did watch Friends together in her apartment. So,
naturally, that was clearly the most important part.
Yes, definitely. That's the most cultural experience that you had during that trip, I'm sure.
In London. Oh my gosh.
How many Friends fans do we have out there?
Right? Seriously, come on.
Probably quite a few.
I hope so at this point.
Oh man. That is so fun. Another question we have is so how do the Spaniards travel? Like what does travel look like for them? Do they travel?
Boy. They, I would say for the most part, do not travel.
Okay.
Which is weird. For me, honestly, was the weirdest thing to understand about them because I clearly grew up in a household where we traveled as much as we possibly could with our income bracket and everything. And even when I was surrounded by friends who had not grown up with that, like they had still exposed themselves to other states or other cultures in one way or another. And when I moved to Spain, I found out that people do not even go out of their region if they can possibly help it. So
like Andalusia, is that like the region?
Yeah. Yes. So okay. I met one friend of mine whose family traveled up to Barcelona, and it was only because his brother had gone up there to study abroad, which was weird at the time. But he met a girl.
To study abroad? But
yes.
It was Barcelona, which is the same country?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Just making sure I'm understanding. Okay.
Thank you. But his brother had met somebody and ended up staying up there. And so he is married and has a child. And so my friend has a nephew up in Barcelona, but he has never been to Barcelona because that's far and it's weird. Wow. It's a totally different culture for him. So that was a strange thing for me to comprehend because obviously I've crossed international borders and I've experienced different cultures, but I've never had the comprehension of being within one border and trying to understand what it is like for somebody from one country to not be able to go to a different part of that country. Because even in the U.S., I've crossed state borders and have tried to meet people and understand people from different regions of our country. But he was struggling to understand his own brother's wife or his own nephew, you know, from a different culture within his same country because the cultural lines are so different there.
Wow.
too. Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating and interesting, and I highly recommend anybody, as soon as they meet a Spaniard, to have a conversation with them about where they're from, where they've been, and where they might want to go. Because honestly, from what I have experienced, none of them want to leave their own region. But who knows?
That's
Maybe
interesting.
they do.
Now,
Yeah.
but Malaga is a tourist destination, correct?
Big time.
So
yes.
for who? Like, who are the tourists that come there then?
For Northern Europeans, lots of Germans, Norwegians, Swedes, English people coming from outside in. Very few Spaniards come there to vacation.
So is that kind of like we go to San Diego, maybe? Is that like a similar type of thing?
Ish.
Or Mexico or something like that?
I would say it's more like Mexico.
Okay.
It's for the people that go to like Cabo or Puerto Vallarta or Cancun or something like that. That is like, they go someplace close, but not exactly their culture.
Okay.
And they don't really care to know their culture either. They just go there for the vacation and know that it's affordable.
Okay. That's really
So they go there for
interesting.
the beach.
Big time.
Yeah. So yes,
Yeah.
that sounds very
Interesting.
similar to Mexico for a lot of
Yeah.
families.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so interesting. Malaga,
Yes.
the Mexico of Europe.
I have thought that exact same phrase multiple times, so I'm glad that you coined it and it wasn't me. Oh, man.
Boy.
Oh my goodness.
So to kind of change the direction just a little bit, so Mikaela, since you've done a lot of traveling, but then you've also lived abroad for what I would consider a relatively extended period of time, 3.5 years, what would you say are some key differences when you live in a place for that long versus traveling to a place, even if you spent, 2-3 weeks in a place? What are different sorts of experiences that you might have, or ways you might look at things? Like, how does that change when you're there for an extended period of time?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like for me, the biggest change was I'm not just looking for like the locals' point of view of where to eat or where to go for the night or where to make sure that I don't miss. But when I live in a place, I genuinely care about the locals' opinion, and not just opinion, but getting to know them as people and trying to approach things much more from their perspective rather than my tourist perspective. And as much as I desperately care to be the tourist that actually cares about the locals' perspective and the locals' input on wherever I'm going and whatever I'm doing, I still recognize that, like, I'm the one that's there and I'm, paying the money to the Airbnb and going and paying money at the local restaurants and whatever. So I know that I'm paying into the local economy, but when I'm there much more longer term, it seems like there's some sort of shift that does seem to be more of a depth into the relationship that I'm trying to build with the people that I'm there with. And it's not just a superficial of where can I eat, where can I get my basic Maslow's needs met, but where can I actually get to know the people of this place, and where can I meet the people that might know the historical parts of this neighborhood that can enlighten me on why I'm here versus there, that brings some depth to the place that I am at versus just this is where I'm sleeping at night. And then I walk 10 minutes and I go there, and this is where I study during the day, or this is where I work during the day, or whatever it might be. I love that there is something so much deeper about, I see these people every single day. And so what can I get from these people? and what do they have to offer me? And it's usually a very, very beautiful thing, you know.
That's very cool. Thanks for sharing that. So normally we would ask our guests like if they had any travel questions for us, but what I care a lot more about at this point is the fact that I am going to Spain.
Yes. So soon.
Yes, and I'm not going to southern Spain. So like
no, but that's fine.
Yeah,
it's
do you forgive
country.
Me for that? Is that okay that I'm not going to
I'm giving you my Trinity blessing with all of the parts.
But I'm going on a loop in northern Spain.
Yes.
And so, but I would just love to hear, like, first of all, I'd love to hear what travel tips you have for me. And then also, I would just love you to tell our listeners, like, just general, like, Spain or Andalusia, like, travel tips that they should be aware of.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, definitely, I would say flying into Madrid. I am assuming that you have people that you're staying with, but
yes.
As you go through your loop, using the local train system in Spain is super great. There are bus options, which are great if you are adamant about cutting time down on your trip. But the trains are actually super, super smooth and definitely, in my opinion, worth the extra expense of just paying for knowing that you're going to have a smooth ride and knowing that you're going to have a dedicated ride that gets you from point A to point B in the timeline that you really truly need. And they're honestly really great, and I feel like locals travel them way more than tourists do, so it's not even just a tourist thing to make sure that you do. But there's going to be probably a ton of commuters on your trains as you go from each destination while you're on your loop. Yes, and I don't know. I mean, there's so many things to say about the loop that you're going on. Northern Spain honestly has so many beautiful destinations to go through, and so I would give you specific cities, but I also know who you're staying with. So I know.
Convenient.
I know.
Well, I mean, I can tell you the cities that I'm staying with if you have any like fun things to say about those cities.
Yeah. So, ooh, actually, that's true. Where are you staying?
Okay, so I'm flying in and out of Madrid. So we're doing Madrid, Valencia, Barcelona, San Sebastian, Leon, Madrid.
Oh, man. Okay. From Leon, if you can even do a quick day trip up to Astorga, it is totally worth it. It's the quaintest, tiny little town, but it's one of those tiny little towns that's on the Camino de Santiago, and it has their own little chocolate shop where they make their own chocolate, and they have... Thank you. I'm so glad that you both did the oohs because it was totally worth it. But they make their own chocolate, and they have for centuries, and they know what they are doing. It is so good. I mean, I would add more O's in there, but I have a feeling you guys would cut it out anyway, so I'm just making it, podcast short there. But truly, it's so freaking delicious. And absolutely worth stopping in Astorga, even just to go buy the chocolate bars, because it's so delicious. And you can buy different grades of cacao that you really want, and you can get, different ingredients mixed within there and everything. It's not that far north of Leon. Okay. I mean, let's make it what it is. If you're in Leon for like a day or two, you totally have time to go up to Astorga. I would highly recommend it.
Okay. That's
good
to know.
As part of your circle, it's quite a bit of a jetty out of your circle. But if you're there, I mean, it's so much closer than Seattle. I'm just saying. It's way closer than the mountains of Central Washington. So there's that, right? That counts for something.
Yes, it does. Yes.
Thank you. So, yes, that is my biggest recommendation for you in northern Spain is definitely do not miss the chocolate.
That is quite a recommendation.
Yes.
Oh, and on the map, it doesn't look like it's that far.
Thank you. I'm so glad that somebody pulled out an old school map. Thanks, Ryan.
Well,
it's probably on his computer.
It's Google Maps, but
that's
if you consider that old school.
You clearly pulled out a physical map.
Yeah, Ryan, can you make some rustling sounds right now to be more convincing, please?
There we go.
Oh, there it is. Oh, the map.
There we go. See, he pulled out the old-fashioned map.
Definitely map.
He unfolded it and everything.
Wow, that was really impressive. Wow. Okay, and then how about for people that want to visit southern Spain? What do you have to say to them? This is your moment.
Okay, listen, people. So you guys are my friends, obviously, because you're listening to this. But truly, if you are planning to go to southern Spain, there are 2 cities that I would forbid you from missing, and it is Granada and Sevilla, or if you're speaking English, Granada and Seville. But rude. We don't use English in Spain. But truly, those 2 cities, along with Malaga, which is beautiful and great and does have some historical sites and everything, but is mostly a beach town, those 2 cities are filled with historical sites and things that you absolutely should not miss. Should you ever go to Spain, if you fly into Madrid versus Barcelona, it's so easy to go down to Granada or Sevilla. It is, an hour and a half or 2-hour train ride. It's incredibly accessible to get to no matter where you're coming from. Even if you're coming from Barcelona, you can definitely make your way down to Andalusia, and I would highly recommend going to those 2 cities. If you have to choose one over the other, maybe Sevilla, because it has not only the Moorish historical sites, but it does have the flamenco dancing that is very traditional Spain. So also very, very fun to experience if you want to get some true Spanish culture. So do not miss the 2 of those cities.
Mikaela, I have some bad news for you.
No. You've never been to Sevilla.
I've never been to Sevilla. This is my 4th time going to Spain, and I still am not going there.
Next time.
But I am
Cheryl,
going to new
I think
places.
what I'm hearing is you need to do another trip to Spain.
There we go.
I mean,
that's
Ryan
fine.
knows I'm okay
best.
with that. Yeah, I better just go
this
back.
This is why he's your co-host, is because he tells you what you really should be doing,
really
right?
good advice. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
I'm pretty good at telling
Cheryl,
other people what to do.
that you do the same for Ryan.
Oh
my gosh.
I mean, I am going to new places that I haven't been to before. So as long as that's the case, I feel good about it. But my other friends in Malaga keep posting on their Instagrams pictures in Sevilla, and I keep being like, why am I not there? But for the loop I'm doing, it is like out of the way enough that I decided not to tack it on. So this makes sense. For this trip, it totally makes sense for you to go where you're going. And hopefully you're not gonna,
next
like,
time that
disown
you
me
go to
then.
Spain. No. No. Of course not. Sevilla will be there waiting for you the next time that you're ready to go.
Okay. All right. I'll let it know when I'm ready for that. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Gracias.
Yeah.
Gracias.
Gracias.
Nice.
So, we do have to ask you a question that also happens to be the title of our podcast.
Oh my gosh.
If
so
you
much
could
pressure.
take us with you to one place in Malaga, what would that be and why?
Oh man. In Malaga. I would actually honestly say there's a little plaza right in front of the Cathedral of Malaga that is beautiful. There's a little tiny fountain there, and from that place you can look up and see both sides of the front, like the front facade of the cathedral itself, and you can see other beautiful buildings that were built in the 1800s, and then some restaurants. And so there's a mix of locals and tourists and everything passing by in that area. But I love that tiny little plaza because it's not big enough to be overwhelming, and it's not so full of tourists because of the location of it. And yet it is such a beautiful setting that you can see so much of Malaga's importance, well, where they place their values and importance and everything. And yet you can also enjoy a delicious dinner with a gorgeous backdrop. It's really, really nice.
Aww.
Okay, I'm ready then. Let's do it.
Perfect. Let's go.
Is that the cathedral that's unfinished? It doesn't have one tower.
No. So, yes, technically, yes. But that is actually intentionally unfinished. So
okay. I saw that one. I think I went there
with the air quotes of unfinished.
Okay. I think I went there the first time I went to Malaga.
Yeah, most likely.
And then the family I was staying with, they showed me this cute little children's book that had all these theories as far as why it was unfinished. And one was that a dragon came and took a piece of it and flew off with it. It was really cute.
That's exactly what happened.
Oh, okay, great.
I mean, that sounds right to me.
You tell all the people that, Cheryl.
You heard it here first. Mikaela, the ever important question, what's your next trip?
The next trip?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this one caught me off guard. I wish I knew. Okay, so realistically, I think the next trip is actually Quebec City, which weirdly I have never been to. And I've been to a lot of different places in Canada, and I speak French. My mom grew up teaching us French and everything outside of Philly, and I've never been to Quebec. But from Boston, it's only 6 or 8 hours.
Oh, very cool.
Which maybe for West Coast people feels like not that long, but from here, I'm just like, oh my gosh, more than 2 hours in the car? Are you kidding me? So we'll see how that goes. But I think that's going to be our next big trip, and I'm so excited because they have a winter market that is very much like the European winter markets. If you were to go to Germany, and they have all their little stands out and everything, and it's just a 6 or 8 hour drive. So, it's almost the same as a 6 or 8 hour flight to Germany or whatever.
Yeah, I have some friends who just did a trip in Canada. I don't remember. I know they were in Montreal. I don't remember where else they were, but kind of on the eastern side of Canada.
So
and
nice.
Beautiful. They had beautiful pictures. Really, really cool things. So that sounds like that could be a really fun trip.
Yes, it does seem beautiful. I'm a little bit nervous about how cold it's going to feel because it's that much further north.
Yep.
But I think it'll be a lot of fun.
That's
awesome.
So fun. Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to move into our last segment then, if you can believe it or not. And we like to call this Wish You Were Here. So each of the three of us is going to highlight some sort of travel attraction. For you, Mikaela, it could be in Malaga or Spain, or it could be anywhere of any of the places, the millions of places that you've been. And then I'll do one and Cheryl will do one as well.
Perfect.
So
Great.
Mikaela, why don't you go ahead and go first?
Okay. So mine is actually in Uganda. And I know that you can actually do this in a lot of different countries in Africa, but I would highly recommend taking the opportunity, if you are in an African country, to do a safari. I grew up going to zoos and seeing animals and all, these amazing different animals behind bars or behind glass or something. But going on a safari was kind of a surreal experience. And seeing these animals out in the wild and knowing that I was the one behind bars, essentially. I was out in a Jeep and being like, I don't belong here at all, and yet these animals are perfectly fine with my being here. It was very, very incredible to see all of that and in live action and not know that it was behind bars or on the other side of a glass pane or even on the other side of a screen. It was surreal. There's no other words that I have to describe it other than surreal. So I think if anybody has the opportunity to go on any sort of safari, no matter what country they're in, I would highly, highly recommend it.
That's so cool.
Okay. Got to add it to my list, apparently.
You can.
Here's the problem with this podcast is that our lists are just going to keep getting longer every episode.
Well,
okay, but as your lists get longer, I'm coming with you, okay?
Great. I mean,
Perfect.
The point of the podcast is basically to add to our list.
True. He makes a very valid point.
Wait,
Ryan
why did we start this again?
He's very sensible. It's true.
All right, Cheryl, where do you want to tell us about?
Okay, so I want to talk about two islands that are near Venice. The islands of Murano and Burano. It's very convenient that they rhyme. So Murano, some people might have heard of because Murano glass is a very famous thing. It's where they do the glass blowing. And so I love being able to visit there because glass blowing is the funnest form of art to watch happen in front of your eyes. It's so impressive. It's just like so crazy. And these people have been doing it for their whole lives. And so that's very fun. But then I also got to go to Burano, and I'd never heard of it before, but I went on this little excursion that went to a couple of different islands. And one of my friends, she was way more excited that I got to go to Burano, and she was like, the buildings are amazing there. The buildings, it felt like being in a children's book. The buildings were all these different bright colors. And then Burano is where they make this crazy impressive lace. And so there were these old women hand stitching this lace, which was just amazing. But and I got some really good food there as well.
Wow.
So that was fun. But just walking the streets of this tiny little island that had these bright buildings was just an amazing experience. And so I'd say if you're in Venice, definitely do some excursions out to the little islands and definitely go to Burano because that was so fun.
Wow.
How about you,
Looking
Ryan?
up pictures right now. That's super cool.
Yeah, isn't it? And we will post those on our Instagram as well.
Is there an Instagram for this podcast already?
Funny you should ask. We'll tell you about it in just a minute.
I can't wait.
Yes, we
After
will.
Ryan tells me where he's going to take me. We'll take us,
Yeah,
I
so
guess.
my Wish You Were Here
Wish You
is
Were Here.
actually
Same
in
thing.
Germany. So I've done quite a few trips to kind of Central Eastern Europe, and we pretty much always fly through Germany. So kind of a Seattle to Frankfurt is the most common. I've also done Seattle to Munich. But there's oftentimes a really long layover, 8 or 9 hours. And for me, I am not going to sit in an airport that long unless I absolutely have to. If I'm in another country for 9
Nice.
hours, that is plenty of time to get out of the airport and experience another country, even just a little bit. So Frankfurt, and I had been outside of the Frankfurt airport several different times and kind of done some walks along the river and seen a whole bunch of different things. But I was on my way home from a trip and I was by myself. And I was like, okay, I've got this 8 hours. I think it was more like 7. But I was like, okay, I want to find something to do. I'm by myself. So it's going to be something that I know I'll enjoy and that it doesn't matter if anyone else would care. And so I went and I found that they have a natural history museum. And so
cool.
I took the train and got off one stop too early, so walked a little bit longer. And it was amazing. I know that there's some museums like this on the East Coast, but I'd never been in one before. I walk into the main hall and I felt like I was in a movie. giant
What?
dinosaur skeletons everywhere. There was a T-Rex and a Stegosaurus and a Triceratops and a Brachiosaur and pterodactyls hanging from the ceiling, like these full skeletons of these dinosaurs. It was unbelievable. I literally just kind of stood there and stared for like a minute because I was just so in awe of it. And then I got to go around, and that was just the main hall. And then there were all of these little offshoot rooms that were all these different themes, and they had thousands of fossils of dinosaurs and of like aquatic dinosaurs and of frogs and all of these different things. Then they had skeletons of whales, and they had a blue whale heart, not just a skeleton, like the actual heart of a blue whale, which is bigger than my entire torso. And it was just like there were all of it was so cool. And I didn't even have enough time to see the whole thing. I just did basically one level, and there were 2 more levels that I didn't even get enough time to go to just because I had to make it back in time for my flight. But it was phenomenal. I absolutely loved it. And so if you've got time to kill in Frankfurt, which if you're flying through Frankfurt, chances are good you probably will, definitely take the time to go to the Natural History Museum. It's amazing.
Cool. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Just add it to the list.
Right? Wish you were here.
Oh, man. Well, Mikaela, thank you so much for being our first guest on our podcast.
Thank you, Mikaela.
First, wow. I'm so honored. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it was so good. We'll definitely have to have you back because clearly you have a lot more travel stories to share.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
So we'll definitely have to have you return.
I would love to be back.
But we would love to hear if you have any.
Not that I'm saying anything, but
Ryan, you might want to watch
hey, whoa.
what's in your
I
drink
said third.
because
I said third.
she might be trying to poison you or something. So I would watch. But,
yeah. Maybe it's a good thing that she's on the East
Coast. Through the airwaves with love.
It's a good thing that you guys, have a country between the two of you because I'm concerned about this now. But Mikaela, do you have anything to plug?
Oh, yes. So I actually have a blog where I did post a few different travel tips and just insights from living abroad and traveling abroad. And that was mikaelamcgee.blogspot.com. Mikaela spelled Mikaela. McGee, the traditional way, MCGEE. Thank you. So it's just at Mikaela McGee. Thanks.
And we will we'll also have those in the show notes, so listeners will just be able to click on those.
Perfect. Thank you.
Well, for us here at Take Me With You, you can follow us on all of the social medias at TimWee Podcast. That's TMWY for Take Me With You Podcast.
Yeah, and so you'll be able to check out some photos of the things that we've been talking about in today's episode. And if you want to join the conversation, there's a couple ways you can do that. So one of them is that you can email us at timweepodcast@gmail.com. Send us questions, comments, guest suggestions, really anything you want to talk about.
Yeah, another way that you can connect with us is through our phone number. You can call us and leave a voicemail or send us a text message at 406-POD-TIMWEE. That's the number is 406-763-8699. And you can also rate and review us on any of the places that you are listening to this podcast right now, and we would appreciate that.
Absolutely, yeah. And as always, we want to give a big thank you to Beth Morrell for our wonderful artwork. We just love it so much.
Yes, it's awesome.
And you can check her out at oh my gosh, I said it wrong. You can check her out at Beth Is Something, which also spells be this something if you think about it.
Yes.
So maybe a fun play on words. So thanks, Beth.
Thanks, Beth.
Woohoo.
Okay, that's what we got for this episode. So until next time, remember to Take me with you.
Take me with you.
Take me with you. Wait, this is where you're gonna delete me out of here, right?